So, Brother Paul, you were talking to us a little bit after our recording last week about how you were participating in the Cursillo. Do you think you could tell us a little bit about what you did in that and what exactly a Cursillo is?
I lived at Cursillo in 1967. And it's a 4-day retreat. It's designed for men, and there's a separate one designed for women. I've been involved, after I lived at Cursillo in 1967, I was involved in the Northern Virginia Cursillo and also the Richmond, Virginia Cursillo. I got involved up here in the year 2000. One of the deacons that I had taught in the diaconate program died, and after the mass, instead of going straight to the cemetery to bury the body, everybody was invited downstairs to have some coffee and sandwiches and whatnot. And while I was downstairs, a deacon by the name of Dan Sullivan, whom I had taught, called me over to meet a priest. His name was Father Joe Callahan, Holy Cross priest, stationed down on Stonehill College, although he was not a professor in Stonehill. And Father Callahan asked if I would be interested in getting involved in the Cursillo down at Stonehill College, the Holy Cross retreat house. See, every time I went in to teach permanent deacons, the first class for years, I said to the men, how many of you have lived the Cursillo? And a few hands would go up. And then I would always say, everybody should live the Cursillo. So that's why Dan Sullivan remembered that and introduced me to Father Joe Callahan. So I started in the year 2000 down there, and last week I finished my 42nd Cursillo down at Stonehill. It was a men's Cursillo, and it's just been a wonderful experience. In 1969, I had to do a master's degree thesis in theology down at the Catholic University of America. And I was supposed to do a paper on a biblical theme, but the professor, who was a priest, left the priesthood. So I had to get another advisor. The priest who was running the program at the time, it was a summer program, said, well, I'm not really a scripture person. I'm a liturgy person. He said to me, what are you interested in? What are the things that interest you? And I said, well, I'm involved with the Cursillo. Oh, the Cursillo. He said, nobody's ever done a thesis on the theology underlying the Cursillo. So that's your topic. So I completed a master's degree on the Cursillo. It was started in Spain after the Spanish Civil War. During the Spanish Civil War, thousands of people were killed on both sides of the conflict. It was within the country, a civil war. And one side had lots of Catholics. Spain is a very Catholic country. And on the other side, there were lots of Catholics. So here we had a situation, a political situation where Catholics were killing Catholics. And the Pope lamented the fact that these people don't seem to understand what Christianity is all about. So these young people said, we'd like to do something to see if we can revive Catholicism, because Spain is spiritually dead. It's spiritually decimated. So these young people organized a big pilgrimage, and they went to St. James of Compostela, which is, I believe, up in the Pyrenees Mountains. It's a big climb. There was a movie made about 20 years ago called The Way. So it's a story of his father who has been devastated by his son's early death, deciding to make a pilgrimage because his son wanted to go on this pilgrimage. So it's a story of the people he meets on the pilgrimage, and finally getting to the shrine. It's a good tale. These young people got in touch with a Spanish bishop by the name of Juan Urvas, and together they put together a very well-constructed 4-day retreat consisting of many talks, many discussions of the talks, poster drawings of the talks, reports of the talks, lots of fun in between, lots of singing, lots of rejoicing. It's hard to explain because there are certain experiences you just can't explain until you go through that experience. As I say, I've been on many, many Cursillos. We have three spiritual directors. I'm one of the spiritual directors. A Holy Cross priest, Father Jim Doherty, and this last retreat I was on, Father Jim Mahoney, who was a pastor in a Catholic church in Burlington. We use spiritual talks, and they all deal with the topic of grace, God's gift and our response to God's gift. I've never met anybody who walked out of the Cursillo. And these are men who come from all walks of life. We had a former chief of police on this last one, 2 state troopers on this last one, a plumber, carpenter. They come from various, we've had doctors, we've had lawyers, we've had all kinds of people, janitors. It's a very moving experience. 2 of our faculty members that I know of, Mr. William White, who teaches English here and plays the guitar at masses, he has lived the Cursillo, and Mr. Greg Blondin, who is a computer teacher, he's lived the Cursillo, so you can always ask them about the Cursillo too. So that's basically what the Cursillo is all about. It's one of the greatest things that I've done in my life, to be involved in my own small way with Cursillo. I got involved in the permanent diaconate program in the Boston Archdiocese in 1973. It was a big year for me because not only was I teaching high school during the day, but one night during the week I was teaching at Emmanuel College in the graduate program on the Old Testament. Another night in the week I was out teaching CCD teachers. We did that at Aquinas Junior College in Newton. And then the third night of the week I started teaching the permanent deacons. Permanent deacons is an order in the church that was restored through Vatican II. It consists mainly of married men who want to serve the church in a liturgical way, but mainly in a service way. So they are really servants of the Lord. There's a description in Acts of the Apostles where 7 men are called to be servants, deacons, and they're ordained. But their job was not to administer the sacraments. Their job was to serve the poor and the widows and the orphans and whatnot among the Christians. The diaconate in Boston started at St. John's Seminary, so that's where I used to teach at the seminary. I started in 1973, and I taught in that program the Old Testament course up until the year 2012. From 1973 to 2012, they didn't always take in the class every year. In other words, some years they took in one class, then another class the next year, and then some years they skipped a year. And then there was a period when I was the provincial and the vice provincial. My work was so heavy that I couldn't teach. Well, once I got out of the provincialate, and I went back teaching the Old Testament. In this diocese, the Worcester diocese, we have graduates of St. John's High School who are permanent deacons. you remember our funeral mass for Brother Connell that we had back in May. One of the persons who served at the altar was a permanent deacon, Paul Convino, his name is. He's the campus minister at Assumption University. But we also have other graduates from the school. Ray Hayes, he was at Temple Street when I was there. I think he was in the class of 58, 57, or 1958. We have Ed Melius, he's a graduate. Colin Novick is a graduate. But we had at least 5 people serving the Diocese of Worcester who were permanent deacons. It's been a joy. Now, every year since 1995, with the exception of the COVID years, I used to give an annual retreat to deacons who had already been ordained. Deacons have to make the retreat, so they can make it anywhere. But in 1995, we started, people asked me to organize a weekend retreat, Friday night to Sunday noon. And I would give 5 talks on a particular topic. And the retreat drew sometimes 25, 30 deacons. Sometimes it would be down to 18, might make 35. It all depended. They had their choice of it. So there were people who would come every year. I called them my groupies. So I would never repeat the retreat, one and done. That was it. So every year I had to come up with a different theme, 5 different talks, so forth and so on. But it's been the joy of my life. It really has. Teaching high school has been wonderful, but all these other outside activities have been terrific too. So I hope that some of the boys at St. John's will be taught about the permanent diaconate. Maybe a teacher would invite one of the permanent deacons who's a graduate of the school to come in and make a presentation. But yeah, the permanent deacon, that part of my life is very, very important. It's a blessing. God has blessed me.
Do you think you could give us maybe a little bit more insight into your life living with the brothers after your career with the PG was over?
But in 1986, I went to England. I think I may have mentioned this. I went to Manchester, England, where we have a high school. In England, they call it colleges. So it's a very college, Manchester. And I worked with young men who were giving a year of their lives of service to the poor of Manchester. I lived with the brothers, the English brothers, and the volunteers. And it was a wonderful experience. I still hear from one of them. He's still working with the Jesuits. He's married and working with the Jesuits. He's probably zeroing in on 60. So, and another one of them became a priest. He's a diocesan priest in England. That was 1986, 1987. Then, I did not go back to teaching. I went and became the vice provincial of the American Northeast Province. And then I became the provincial of the province up until 1993. And then in 1993, I went on a sabbatical and went back to England. We had a house outside London, the Heathrow Airport. That was our general headquarters, and I lived there for 6 months and took 2 courses at King's College, London, which is located right downtown on the Strand and the Thames River. Then I went back to high school for 2 years. Then a job opened in the Catholic school office, okay? And the Catholic school office wanted me to be the director of the 36 high schools, the Archdiocese of Boston, as far as religion was concerned. So religious programs, priest chaplains, campus ministry programs, all were under my umbrella. So I did programs for them, got speakers there, went to schools, and talked to the members of the department. The superintendent of Catholic schools retired in 2000, and I retired in 2000. When she left, I left. Then I moved here to St. John's. Now, all the time I was doing this, of course, I was living in community. I've never lived by myself. You know, there are some brothers who, of necessity, because of the work they do, live by themselves or live with a priest in a rectory. We have a brother down in Brooklyn, New York, and does that. But I've always lived in community. That is one of the blessings, the great joys of my life. When I got to the novitiate, I didn't know anybody. I never went to a Severian school. After 1 week at Fort Monroe, Virginia, or Old Point Comfort, Virginia, I knew this is where God wanted me. God wants everyone to be happy. God wants everyone to find his place. I think that's what I've never been tempted to leave. You know, I've never said, oh, I think this religious life is too much. I know I would have made, I think I would have made a very good husband. And I think I would have made a very good father. And I think I would have made a terrific grandfather. But those things were out of the cards. If you want to serve the Catholic Church, you're going to promise celibacy. Brothers and priests. Although there are some married priests. I mentioned Father Emmanuel Charles McCarthy, who was in the Melkite Rite and was married with 12 kids and had 3 kids after his ordination. You know, it wasn't that he had to have all the kids before he was ordained to the priesthood. No, he had 3 kids after he was ordained to the priesthood. But the thing that makes religious life a joy is the people you live with. And one of the things you'll learn about living with people is no 2 people have the same ideas. No 2 people have the same personalities. You're not joining a bunch of clones. You know, when I first came to St. John's, there must have been 5 brothers. They were probably in their 50s, 60s. And there were like 4 of us who were in our 20s. So all the way along the line, I've had to live with older people and younger people, you know. And somehow we're able to negotiate our differences. You know, I've never had any arguments with people about politics. We're not allowed to really argue about politics. There's a sad, sad portion of our history. We call it sinful history of the Severian brothers. Brothers, there are quite a few houses in Louisville, and some of the brothers were German leaning, and some were French. And the Dutch, but people took sides in the Franco-Prussian War. And they had bitter arguments at table in Louisville. So bad was it that a number of brothers left the congregation and joined other orders. And from that point on, we said, politics is a forbidden subject. It's a dividing subject. So we don't argue about politics, and we try to live as brothers. That's why we're called brothers. It's just not a title. Try to live as if this way your blood brother. You know, as I say, we do have our differences. Some people like baseball, some don't. You know, some like to play tennis, others don't. But we all kind of work together. In harmony, small things grow. That's a motto we have. But it's always been great. It's always been great. When I came here in the year 2000, I was welcomed with open arms. Brother Kylo drew me here because he knew I was on Temple Street in my early career. And we had to leave Westwood because the community was dissolving, our numbers had gone down, and the school wanted the Brothers' House. As the school now has the Brothers' House, the old Brothers' House is where all the counseling offices and where Mr. Sakira has his office. That used to be the Brothers' residence. And so that's, yeah, community life is the best.